Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined today by my brother, the Gritty Broman, behind the camera. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
Today's podcast is going to be about bears and bear stuff, bear facts. We just published a video last night of a 2017 bear hunt.
Up in POW.
Southeast Alaska, black bear hunt. And my cousin Ben, myself, and my buddy Chad, Dad, my buddy Anthony. Although my dad and Anthony didn't have tags, they were there for the crab, which we caught piles and piles of crab, our limit each day. And then we actually took to freezing the crab, and then we brought it back to the United States. They say it only lasts like a couple of months in the freezer.
Like it's going to last that long.
But we pretty much ate it in 6 weeks or so, we were well ahead of schedule. But I guess crab isn't that good. I thought it was unreal. And we froze it. I was like, if you're complaining about frozen crab, then you're a little spoiled. You know, it's not like it's fresh, but...
Well, frozen crab that's been, caught within 2 hours, it's a little different than frozen crab that's been there for a couple of weeks.
It was amazing. We ate a lot of clams when we were there, too. Oysters. Man, it was just a killer hunt. So check that out. It's up on our YouTube channel. We put it out Sunday. And this month, we're putting out a video every Sunday. So we have a part 2 of that Southeast Alaska bear hunt.
Yep.
And we also are going to have another bear hunt that's a bow hunt in British Columbia with our good friend Jeff Lander up there at his place, Primitive Outfitting. We're there with Kyle Ostrand, who's a good friend of ours.
Yep.
And
at the end of this month, you're going to see 4 more dead bears and a dead mule deer.
Yes, and Anthony's son, Barack, he shot a nice 190-something inch, 90-plus inch mule deer in Colorado.
How old is Brock now? He's 15, going on 16?
Yeah. This was a couple years ago, though. So this
He's 13
year,
in this film.
This year, y'all saw him and Caitlin go on that elk hunt, and he killed that big 7x7 bull with Anthony and I, his dad, Anthony.
Yep.
We did a film on that. We released a couple months back. So go check that out if you missed it. But it's a cool hunt. He's
only been hunting legally for about 3 years now, and he's already got a better career than I do at the age of 30.
His elk is bigger than mine and my biggest, and bigger than my biggest mule deer as well. So
yep,
he's got his dad to thank for that. He worked his butt off, but yeah. So we're gonna publish that hunt. It's a cool little family hunt, public land, all do it yourself, mule deer. It's a neat hunt. We'll put that at the end of the month. So just be looking for the films. And we appreciate all you guys that are watching it, liking it, leaving a comment, subscribing. And if you do leave a comment this month on one of those videos, we're going to pick a group of people, a bunch of people to win some Mountain Ops Ignite. We're going to give that away. So leave us a cool comment and we'll grab a 4 or 5, maybe 10 lucky people. Today, though, I wanted to get into bear facts, bear hunting, and bear meat care, because it's a subject that is often asked about when it comes to bear hunting. People have this misconception that bear meat isn't good, and in fact, it's one of my favorite game meats. I've said this many times. Those who follow the podcast know this, but if you're new, bear meat is amazing. It really is, and not enough people are partaking of it, consuming it. A lot of people ask me, how do you like your bear meat? I like it canned.
Yep.
Even when we were on Prince of Wales Island, a bunch of the locals were like, the best way is to can it, and to can it quickly. So we're going to get into that, because bear meat can taint. The flavor can taint.
Yeah.
The bear fat can spoil or go rancid pretty quickly. When we say rancid, it just means that it's an unstable oil, and even in the freezer, it can turn bad. So we're going to get into that. I want to get into bears themselves. There's a lot of facts that we gathered about bears. Some of them made them into our bear series we published last spring, which I'm about to repeat in about a week or two. With Ryan Lampers and I, we're going to hit some wilderness patch somewhere and get on some spring bear. Hopefully there's enough greenery up there that they're coming out of the dens, and we hope to get a couple more smoker bears. We actually, between the two of us, we have 3 bear tags across various states. So hopefully COVID-19 doesn't shut us down. We're able to get out and get some bear meat. We'll be very socially distanced. It seems like a good use of our time. It's kind of a strange... Most of the states have been closing them down to non-residents, which could be a problem for us on some of those hunts, but we'll see what we can do. Hopefully COVID-19 doesn't kill. I already got the tags in my pocket, so unless they make some new rule changes, we should be good to go. we were one of those people that got in on some of the tags before they shut down the sales to non-residents. So we got in there early. Hopefully we can do that. But I want to talk to you about bears in general. We're just going to spin through some bear facts, interesting bear trivia. I think it can help in your bear hunts. It can help in just your general bear knowledge. It's cool stuff. We nerd out on this, right, Brent?
Bear's my favorite.
They're cool.
It's cool. Like,
people are always talking about horned game, like deer and elk and all of that. And I'm always like, there's something so cool about hunting bears.
Not only is it cool, the meat's the best. It's the best game meat that I've had.
It does. When you can it, and it's a mountain bear eating blueberries and so on, it does have a flavor of like your best pot roast, beef pot roast. It has a great flavor. It's rich.
But here's the deal. Like, not only do you get the cool, awesome meat, if you shoot a big smoker, you've got a big bear rug.
Yeah, you do have a fur or a rug that's...
And like, everyone likes looking at horns.
Yeah.
European or a real mount or whatever. But if you have a bear rug, everyone's going to ask about the bear.
I have like 4 or 5 sitting
It could be a real raggedy, ratty bear rug.
I've got one right here on my table right here. In fact, in studio.
For those
which
that are
when
watching.
I say studio, we've moved to the garage area of Gritty because of this COVID thing. Who knows how long we'll be
I would say
filming.
It's getting a little nippy in here.
It's getting a little ghetto. But yeah, I love bear furs. I have a freezer with last year's cinnamon and chocolate in there. I haven't been able to get it tanned. But I started going, as this COVID thing has got us trapped in the house. We've pretty much cleaned out the upright freezer, and we are moving to the chest freezer. And the chest freezer has meat from the bottom to the top. So we're going in there, cracking open we got a lot of bones in there for bone broth.
We're only like 2-3 years behind. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, some of them like mule deer from Montana, like 2 years back.
Yeah, 2018.
Anyway, getting to some of that meat in there, and we'll try to get it all canned. Mostly canned because I don't want to use up my freezer space, and it seems to keep well, and it's really convenient. I like to can meat. Suzanne's been doing deer right now.
She's been doing like a batch a day.
It's handy. She just puts it in, does her thing, kind of goes about her day. And then before you know it, you have just cans of delicious meat. So
yeah. So you've gone through it. You've chopped, when you brought your game meat home, you chopped them all up into cubes, dropped them into bags. And so you have these Ziplocs that are just full of cubed meat.
Yeah, I do that.
Now take out, and then she just quickly throws them in a thing.
I do that a lot. I like to butcher all my own meat so I know where it came from.
Yeah.
When I get it home, I might take the whole quarter and drop it in the freezer and then turn around and go right back out on another hunt or something.
Might.
Sometimes I do. So what happens is, finally when things settle down, I'll pull out a whole quarter and put it on the table in the garage, and then I'll chop it up. So I'll debone it. I'll try to keep all the bones so I can make bone marrow bone broth out of it using an Instapot, which we'll talk about on another podcast. Depending on the cut, I might cut it into a roast. If it's like a neck, I like the neck roast.
Grab some twine and tie it up.
Yep, and then I'll just put it in our vacuum sealer, throw it in the freezer. The other thing, I might wrap it in saran wrap in a Ziploc instead of a vacuum sealer. It just depends on what I got laying around. The other thing that I'll do is, if it's a cut that I want to make jerky out of, same thing. I'll wrap it in saran wrap, right jerky on the outside.
Yep, which Brian is making some jerky right now.
Yes.
You've seen some of that footage here in a little bit.
So I like to slice that up on our meat slicer. It's got it at Cabela's for like $100. And then we'll marinate the meat in a marinade. I have a mix I like, a recipe I like that Suzanne and I have kind of tweaked. Then I'll throw it on the dehydrator and we'll dehydrate all the jerky. But the rest of it, I cut into cubes often so that I can either add some bacon, like pork fat to it.
Oh, make sausage and stuff with it?
No, just burger.
Okay.
With a little bit of pork fat in it, or I'll keep it lean and I won't add anything to it. Just depends on the flavor of the meat. You know, some animals have a little more gamey flavor. I'll throw a little pork in there, and it seems to like balance that out. So there's 3 things I might do with it. Okay,
Once it's been cubed and it's in a Ziploc
so I
bag.
cube it and I put it in a Ziploc bag, and I have like 10, 15, 20, 30 gallon Ziploc bags full of cubed meat
at any given time.
Right, and then what I'll do is Suzanne will take that cubed meat and she'll put it into jars and she'll can it. Or,
which we did a podcast. You guys can go and check that out.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description field of this video. Or what she'll do is she'll take the cubed meat and she'll make stew, which she does all the time as well.
Yep.
She'll drop that in the Instapot or a crock pot. She'll throw them in potatoes. She has a sweet venison soup recipe that's to die for. It's just the perfect mix of herbs and spices and stuff. And
I haven't eaten today, Brian. This is
well, she'll slow cook and she'll make a stew.
Yeah.
And then or a soup sometimes. Or the third thing she'll do is we'll grind it up. We'll get a grinder, we'll grind it up, and we'll have burger, spaghetti, meatloaf, like you name it.
You got like a $200 grinder from Cabela's or something.
Yeah. That's a lot of options with the cubed meat. When I'm in a hurry and I don't have a specific roast or cut I'm taking off, like back straps, I'll keep in steak size. I'll even use them for jerky sometimes. The tenderloin I'll keep separate. Some of the shoulder I'll turn into a roast. The neck I'll turn into a roast. Lately, I've been just turning the hind into cubed meat. I know a lot of guys love a hind roast, but on deer, I'll leave the whole leg intact.
Yeah.
On the bone.
Leg on bone.
And I'll cook it with the whole bone, like the whole ham. I did a recipe Hank Shaw has where he smoked a deer hind quarter, the whole quarter. And that thing, we marinated for like 9 days, 10 days.
You basically put like a rub, a wet rub on it, saran wrapped it.
Salt.
Salt, that's what it is. And it stayed in your fridge in the air, right?
Yep, for 9 days. I flipped it over back and forth.
And it made like a crust. It looked like roast beef.
Yeah, and then I smoked it for a day.
Yeah.
In the Traeger on the smoke setting. Just smoked the hell out of it. And then it turned out to have it was just smoked meat. It was like ham. It
made me think of smoked salmon.
Yeah.
Like just the kind of hardish, crusty part of the smoked salmon. It's my favorite.
It was really, really nice. And it never really cooked. It cooked in the marinade.
Yeah.
In the salt. It aged and it cooked on the smoker, but never cooked at like high temp.
Yeah.
And so it's a different way to do it. But I really liked it when you cut it into slices, you can just throw it in your backpack and eat on it. It's not quite jerky. No. But it's not quite like raw. It's like a smoked meat, so you could eat that for a week or so.
It looked a lot like a deli meat.
It was more like a cured salmon or ham kind of thing.
It was really good. I'm going to be doing that again. I want to do that in the future.
It's a great way. So I got that other Coues deer leg, and it's the perfect size
fits right in
for smoking like that. So, but let's get into the bear stuff. We're going to talk about keeping bear meat in the wilderness. There's a lot of issues with meat. In fact, when we were on our last leg of that bear hunt with Lusk and Lampers and I last spring, one of the questions that came up a lot was, how did you guys preserve your meat? Because it was hot. We were in a race against time for the meat and the hides. And so we didn't lose any meat that I can recall. It
was pretty amazing. You guys shot 5 bears.
Yep, 5 bears. Yep. I shot 2, Lampers 2, and Lusk shot a gorilla. One of the biggest bears I've ever seen inland taken.
Black bear. So you guys shot 5 bears in about 3 days. And no, some of them were out.
It was 5 days.
Yeah, Ryan said, Ryan's
bear was back there for more than 5 days, I think.
Hanging in a tree or something?
Yeah. So we'll get into that. We'll get into that towards the end. I want to talk about how we handled the meat, and some things about meat. How long will meat last when it's not in a cooler in the wild and so forth? Because that's interesting discussion. So let's get into the bear facts, though. Brent, did you know that the bear's keenest sense is their sense of smell?
Well, it's not their eyesight. I know that much.
Yeah, they have like little black beady eyes that can't see anywhere.
They're worthless.
So the bear's sense of smell is about 7 times greater than a domestic dog.
And how much greater is theirs than ours? Like a dog's?
Oh, I don't.
A magnitude of 10? Easy?
More. Thousands. If their sense of smell is 7 times greater than a dog, and you know what a bloodhound can do.
Yeah.
When a dog can track a wounded animal 2 days after it was shot and travel and follow it for miles and then find it, that's a sense of smell.
So you really have to play the wind when hunting these guys.
So with a bear, it's all about the wind. Yeah. I mean, you can't trick them. And their nose they rely on so heavily. It's such a powerful nose. That's how they find dead things and sweet, sweet blueberries and fish and so on. Now, their ears are the next thing. Bears can hear pretty darn good because it's their eyesight that's not really there. And so with poor eyes, they have a really enhanced sense of smell and great ears. Now, a lot of times they'll be distracted because they're pigging out on something when you're sneaking up on them, but you can't underestimate them. Sometimes when they freeze or they're listening, they'll pick you up. If they're distracted, sometimes they won't hear you. I respect a bear's sense of hearing.
So when you're sneaking up on them, what do you mostly watch? Are you trying to like fixate and watch their ears? Because you're downwind and you're going towards them. What are you looking for? Body posturing, or do you try to keep an eye on the ears?
Like when we were bow hunting them in Prince of Wales, I'm stalking feet, being really quiet. I don't worry about being seen much. So I'll stand perfectly upright. I'll try to use something in the background to break up my silhouette or image, right? Like walking next to a tree line. But I don't really worry too much. I've had bears swing their head, look right at me, and see right through me. As long as I'm not moving, they don't see a thing. And they turn and they start eating again. And you're in the wide open. So when I say wide open, if you're in a wide open green grass meadow, standing upright, they're going to see that shape in a spot where it's not supposed to. But if you're among trees and bushes, you just look like another tree and bush to them. They can't see it. Black bears. Grizzly, totally different thing.
Yeah.
Much better vision. But black bears, that's the deal. So you're walking around. I'm being very careful when I walk around to be quiet, and I'm just playing the wind. So I try to move when the wind is blowing, when their head is down, when they're asleep. Bears are goofy, flipping rocks, tearing up a log, eating a beehive, like you name it.
They need a lot of calories. They're like on the move. They're hungry. They're moving constantly.
That's why I like to get out after them, though, right as they pop out of the den. Because they're a little sluggish for a while, for a week or so. And during that window, you have a much better chance of getting on one. When it's the rut, like in June, and they're chasing sows around, man, you might see a bear on that mountain 500 yards away. By the time you get there, he could be 2,000 yards on the other mountain. And so it's really hard to hunt them, at least spot and stalk style, when they're just wandering everywhere. That's why earlier is a little better. Plus, they're going to be right where the only green sources are. So if it's been a pretty gnarly winter and the spring is just hitting and there's only 2 or 3 pockets of green, you can pretty much stake your life on the fact there will be a bear in that pocket. Once everything greens up, they're going to be all over because there's green everywhere. So it's a little harder to get on them. Okay. During their time in hibernation, an American black bear's heart rate drops from 40 to 50 beats per minute to 8 beats per minute.
Wow.
In the winter. 8 beats a minute, bro. So from 40 to 50 down to 8. And the metabolic rate can drop to a quarter of the bear's non-hibernating or basal metabolic rate. So that means their metabolism drops down to 25%. So they're really conserving a lot of energy. They're not digesting and burning fat that much. And their heart 8 beats a minute.
That's nothing.
Nothing.
It's nothing.
They're practically dead.
Yeah.
It's why I've heard these researchers say they go out and they find a bear that's hibernating. And it's like they can roll it around and move it. And it just can't. You know how you come across like a yellow jacket that's in the cold? And it just is stuck there. It's just too cold to function. That's kind of what I picture a black bear in a den during hibernation. Okay, so up to 85% of the American black bear's diet consists of vegetation. A lot of people think that black bears are these big meat eaters, or bears in general, that, I'd say the non-hunting public especially. And they think that bears are just out there killing everything and eating it. And it's just not the case, especially in the case of black bear. When you're talking about an animal where 85% and sometimes 90% of its diet is vegetation, that's a pretty tasty animal. You think about it, it's not much different than a cow.
Yep.
And then when we look at, in certain locales, you look at what the bear actually eats when you're talking about animal life. And a lot of that is worms, grubs, insects.
Super high dense protein packets.
Right. They're not eating carrion or rotten meat or even fish. So
inland.
Right. And so you can imagine why the meat would taste good. Like Hank Shaw, the wild game chef, says. In the case of an omnivore, the animal really does taste like what it eats.
Yep.
So if it's eaten out of a garbage can, it tastes like garbage can. If it's eating rotten salmon in a river,
yep,
it tastes like
dirty salmon bear.
Yeah, like an ocean.
Yep.
like a rotten ocean at low tide. And if it's eating blueberries and green grass, it's got a sweet, sweet, tasty blueberry taste. So something to keep in mind where you're hunting. But yeah, 85% of their diet is vegetation. Black bears recycle their urine when they hibernate.
Yeah, that one's trippy. How do they recycle it? Does the body just keep pumping it?
That I don't know.
Or are they drinking it?
No, I don't think it leaks out. I think it just kind of gets, I don't know.
I
don't see how they're drinking it, bro.
Well,
they have like a basin they go in.
Some animals can just aim real
No,
well.
I think it just reabsorbs and goes back through, and I don't know. We'll have to do some digging on that one. It says, upon exiting hibernation, this is what I was talking about earlier, bears retain a reduced heart rate and metabolic rate for up to 21 days after hibernation. So, like I said, those 2 to 3 weeks after they come out of hibernation, they're sluggish, and they don't really go places. They're pretty standstill. And they're in the process of just trying to wake up still, get that heart rate, metabolism going. They eat a lot of grass in that time, and they have a butt plug.
I was going to say, what about that post-hibernation deuce?
Yeah, like there's sort of a blockage there, and they shake that loose and get things flowing again. So it says, after emerging from their winter dens in the spring, they wander their home ranges for 2 weeks so that their metabolism accustoms itself to the activity. Yeah, what I've noticed is, when they wander, they're wandering real slow. And when they say home range, it's like, I believe it's real close to where their
den is,
where they're going to live. Quite localized. Later, it seems like they just go miles and miles and miles. The average lifespan in the wild is 18 years, though it is quite possible for wild specimens to survive more than 23 years.
That one that you shot in Prince of Wales, how old did Ketchikan say it was?
I thought it was like 19 years old.
I thought it was older than that. I thought it was like mid-20s or something crazy.
It had missing teeth and stuff, and it was pretty ancient.
Was that how long they had been tracking it, or how old they thought it was?
No, how old they thought it was.
19.
They age them all. I just never got the
paperwork,
the information back. Yeah, you got to call them and bug them for it. But it was old. You could tell just from broken teeth and missing teeth and worn down jaws and the coat and everything. A bear, when it's old, you can tell. The average lifespan, being in the wild, being 18 years. That's the average. That's a long time. When they say it can go 23 years, it means they live a long time. There's not a lot of things that will kill them. I think that a bear is pretty much vulnerable when it's a cub, and that's when it can get eaten by a grizzly or another black bear and so on. But once I think those bears get to a certain age, 3-4 years old, I don't think there's a lot that's going to kill them. They're resilient. They're tough. They have the gear to live a long lifespan. They don't reproduce that quickly, though. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So that's why a lot of states, it's not legal to kill a sow, because the sow takes like 3 years before it can even get pregnant. And then the gestation's like a year or something.
It's long.
And then once it gives birth, it takes
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years before the cub is old enough to leave its mom and the mom gets pregnant again. So you can see how they don't reproduce very quickly. It's a slow process, kind of like humans.
They're not like whitetail.
No, whitetail can breed at 6 months old, pop out babies.
Babies
making babies. In Prince of Wales, there was a time when bear tags were sold over the counter. There were a lot of guys, they can't tell. There's a hard time judging bears, right? You can't tell if it's male or female.
If it pretty much doesn't have cubs with it, I couldn't tell if it was a sow or not.
Well, it's tricky. So you got to pay close attention. There's ways you can tell, but even then you could be wrong. And so what they did was hunters were going down on the rivers while they're on the salmon in the fall, and they're getting ready for the winter. And those bears are just smashing the salmon down there. And a guy goes down there with his tag and he shoots a bear, just a black bear. And too many sows were being taken as a result of that. And you were losing a lot of generations of future bears, because when you shoot a sow, like I said, and you wipe out a sow population, it's really tough to bring back a bear population. It takes a long time. They changed it so that you can only hunt them in the spring. I can't remember all the rules, and I'm sure they've changed since last I checked. But there are rules around how you harvest a bear to help encourage the shooting of boars, male bears only. All right, back to the animal diet. the part where they eat living things. Mostly it's bees, yellow jackets, ants, their larvae, and other insects. So their larvae being grubs, they're flipping those rocks in the spring. Yep. You walk through that meadow like we were in, Lampers and I, and you can see rocks flipped everywhere because they flip those things over and they're eating all the insect larvae, all the grubs, and all the worms. Mm-hmm. And was it you telling me like 3 grubs were the same nutritious value, or 5 were the same nutritional value as a quarter pounder burger?
Yeah.
It's
not a lot. It's like they'll fit in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. Like 3 or 4 little worms is the same protein as a hamburger.
Yeah.
Black bears are very opportunistic eaters. Most of their diet is grass, roots, and berries. Despite their name, black bears can be black, cinnamon, blue, gray, or even white. So Mom and Dad sent me a picture the other day of a mounted bear that they saw on Facebook for sale. And it was this big
why?
Yeah, it's this big full body mount of this bear, and it was pretty white-ish. Looked like a Kermode bear. So in Alaska, there's a few places where there's a white bear, the spirit bear. There's a few nicknames for it. It's more or less considered sacred by native peoples, and it's it's called a Kermode. And I don't think you can hunt them. I think they are restricted. But they're just a black bear with that white color face.
Yep.
But right here in Wyoming and Utah, I've seen some pictures of some bears that are pretty much white. They're so light colored, blonde. So there's a lot of different color phases with black bear. That's one of the things that makes it cool to go hunt them, especially the lower you get in the lower 48 or the hotter the climates can get. You tend to get color phases.
Yep.
When you hunt bears up north or on the coast, pretty much almost everything's dark or black.
It's about 25% of all black bears are black. But as you start heading more north up into Canada and stuff like that, that number changes and goes higher and higher up to about 50 to 55%.
Yeah. When I'm in British Columbia, and I've hunted black bear there a couple of times, you'll come across a cinnamon or a chocolate now and then. But you'll see in Arizona, in Wyoming, Utah, some of the high desert areas, you'll see bears that are all sorts of red, orange, brown, golden. Some look like a silver-tip grizzly.
Yeah.
Like, you'll get so many color variations. It's really neat to get out there and chase them and see what you come across. I was on a black bear once, and it wasn't black. It was in the blues with Anthony in Oregon. And this bear was blondish red. It had highlights. I mean, it was a rock star. It was the coolest, and it was a huge fat bear. It was one of the prettiest bears I've ever seen. Laid eyes on this bear. I was like blown away. It was just, the color was phenomenal. You're used to seeing a black bear, but that color phase was just so rare and unique to me. And he's big. So I tried to get on this bear, was getting ready, and Anthony's like, wait, we're going to do this, to get this shot. And then the bear got away. I don't blame Anthony. I should have been a faster
Should have been
shot,
like, Anthony, I'm shooting.
Should have been like Ben, huh?
I was going to say, should have pulled cousin Ben. Anthony, I'm losing my shot.
Yeah. So this is back to what you were saying, Brent. Approximately 70% of all American black bears are black, though only 50% of American black bears in the Rocky Mountains are black.
There it is.
Yeah, 70% of them are black, but only half are black in the Rockies. So basically, like we said, the southern inland states.
Yep.
You'll get these color phases. Okay, let's talk about trichinosis.
The trichiosis?
Yeah, trick. The host's immunologic reaction to larva migration into tissue can result in persistent fever, sweating, chills, periorbital edema, urticarial rash, and conjunctival or sublingual hemorrhages. Brent experienced that.
Lots of fun. That right there.
So trichinosis. Trichinosis is actually the disease from the trichinella worm, roundworm, that burrows into your tissue.
Yep.
So the thing about trichinosis is all omnivores can have it. The eggs live inside the meat tissue of another animal.
Yep. The worms leave cysts inside the meat tissues on other
animals. And when we
animals.
say cysts, that's like eggs.
Yep.
Okay. So those eggs are in the muscle of, let's say, a bear, because that bear ate another bear that died. Okay, rotten flesh. These parasitical worms are in the meat. So they eat the meat. Now the bear has it. Now we kill the bear. We eat the meat. Now we have the worm. The worm hatches.
You don't cook it well.
Worm hatches in your stomach bile. Like as it digests the meat, the stomach bile makes the egg hatch.
Yep.
That little roundworm then hatches in your stomach and then starts attaching itself to your intestines and starts burrowing through and starts going into your muscle tissue, can go into your brain. And it actually is a worm that eats you inside.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't take much to kill trichinella worm. You can avoid getting it simply by cooking meat. So undercooked meat is the cause of getting trichinosis, and trichinosis is the infestation of the roundworm. You can avoid it by cooking your meat up to 165 degrees. The internal temperature of the meat should be at 165 degrees for at least 3 minutes. And then that kills it. Now, we often cook to 170.
Yep.
Cook it at 170 for a long time.
You can cook the crap out of bear meat, and it's still tender and good.
When you put it inside a jar and you can it.
Yeah, you're boiling the bejeebers out of it.
You're just going nuts.
Yeah.
On
when you
fire.
pull it out and you set the jar on the counter, it's boiling
still
inside.
For like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
after.
weird.
And
It's a
the lids
vacuum
pop,
boil.
Pop, pop, pop. So the meat is good and cooked when you can it. That's why it's a favorite way to process this kind of meat, because
you can cook large batches
and you
temperature control.
Yep, you remove the risk of getting trichinosis.
Which is not something you want to play around with.
And that's why a lot of times people will can the meat. They'll process it for jerky or not jerky,
salami.
but salami or sausage, something where they've cooked the heck out of it and then made it into some kind of processed meat. So favorite way to do it. I don't recommend steak, Yeah,
I don't do steaks anymore.
You might not get it cooked all the way through, or
it was 100%. I know what steak it was. It was a Father's Day meal we were cooking.
I gave Brent some bear from POW.
Yes.
And Brent took it home, and it was good meat.
Yeah, everyone ate it.
Yeah,
but there was one. What happened was they were saying, "Hurry up, let's go," and I was like, "This one's a little rare. I'll eat it."
Very, very unwise choice, as it turns out, as Brent got trichinosis, and it was pretty bad. It locked you up. Your body didn't move right.
Yeah,
I had sick, and it was bad.
Like my arm looked like I was like mentally handicapped or had problems. Like it would lock up against my chest.
Yeah.
That was really the only thing that happened. I mean, I had some spasms in the leg, but mostly diarrhea.
Yeah.
Was the problem. Like you get dehydrated.
And it wrecked you for probably 6 months or more.
Well, the worms wrecked me for a little bit.
The dewormer.
The dewormer wrecked me for almost 2 years.
Yeah, they were saying the dewormer, they're talking about it on some forums I was reading the other day. And that dewormer can have some pretty serious side effects, especially if you don't get the dose right. You want to kill the worm, but you don't want to kill your
kidneys as well,
your gut, intestines, and everything else.
It was a trying time.
Yeah,
doctor wouldn't believe me. Do you know how many people every year in the U.S. are diagnosed with trichinella?
20
on average. Yeah,
on average, 20 people a year.
So do you know how many doctors come across that?
When you have 300 million people,
yeah, that's nothing. I just had to barter with the lady. I told her it's not a narcotic. I'm not going to abuse this. I was like, just in case that, because what they want to do is they want to test your blood. But the problem is they're testing your blood when you already have trichinosis.
Right.
I knew already the symptoms. I knew I probably had worms. I wanted to get ahead of that boat. Yeah. And so I was like, look, just give me the dewormer. And so she cut me.
The dewormer.
The dewormer. So she finally cut me a prescription. I went down there and I didn't have insurance. It was going to cost me $7,000. Isn't
that crazy? Isn't that crazy, folks? Like, Brent didn't have insurance. It's $7,000 for dewormer, and it's the same exact dewormer that you find in sheep and goat dewormer at the local vet store.
So I literally went to Target.
Farm and Feed.
Walked out of Target, went to Coastal's 20 feet down the way.
It's a farm and feed store.
Yeah, I walked in there, said, "Where's your sheep dewormer?" And I went and got sheep dewormer, started sipping on it.
Yeah, they had that on... Ranella got it at the same time, and there were some guys on some forums that I had researched that were just buying it at the store because they were running the same thing. It was like thousands of dollars for some basic dewormer that you can get for $30.
Yep.
But it's animal suspension grade, like it's not human suspension, so the dosage is hard to figure out.
Well, they also have multiple stomachs as well.
Right.
Like,
right. So the medicine, although it's the same active ingredient, how much of it you should take that's been
really
formulated for a
tricky.
goat versus for a human, we couldn't figure out the numbers or the amounts. In the meantime, you ordered it from Canada?
So I found a website on Canada, but it shipped from India in some blister packs, like a pair of chiclets or something.
Right. And that was like $25 or something?
I think between shipping and handling and everything, it was $65.
So
instead of $7,000.
It came about a week later, so you had to...
No, it took 6 weeks to get there. That's why I was still sipping on the sheep dewormer.
Do you have some of that laying around? We might need to order some of that just in case.
It's something to have on hand.
Oh, man. It's ridiculous that in the United States, you can't get that same product for less than $7,000 without insurance. It's just ridiculous. It's shameful. Especially when you can get it for $50, $70 for, when you order it online.
The difference is you could buy it from them and it's a pill that you can swallow, or I had to go down and get some stuff that tasted like, it had the consistency of Pepto-Bismol,
right?
But not the taste. It did not come pre-minty.
Moving on, let's talk about the bear meat itself, taking care of bear meat. Okay, nutritional value per 100 grams or 3.5 ounces of meat is 8 grams of fat, 20 grams of protein.
Wow.
Yeah. It is a fatty meat, which is why a lot of colonial early settlers and Indians, natives, they valued the meat because it has
not only is it caked in fat, but it's marbled with fat too.
Yeah. So it's got 10% of the vitamin A you need, 57% of riboflavin, 21% of niacin, 14% thiamine. Iron is 55% and phosphorus 23%. It's a good meat. Okay, meat care. When you're hunting in the spring for spring bear, flies can be your nemesis. If the temperature is above 40 degrees, you could have a real problem with flies flying around, landing on your meat and laying eggs, like right off the bat. Okay, so there are some things you want to do. You want to protect against blowflies, bag your skinned meat immediately using bags that are fly-proof. We use Gracksaw game bags, GRAKKSAW, use the code GRITTY. But we'll have a link in the video. We use those bags for backpacking because they're lightweight, they're perfect for deboned meat.
Yep.
And they keep the flies off your game meat. And enough for a couple of bears, the bags weigh 6 ounces.
Yep.
I mean, that's almost nothing for a set of game bags.
And they're reusable. You just throw them in the washer.
Throw them in the wash, reuse them. They're good little bags. And so we use those bags to immediately, as soon as we cut open our bears, because it was hot, we threw the meat in the game bags. And then, of course, we deboned it, got the hide off as quickly as possible. Those are critical things in the heat of the sun because look at this hide. Bear fur is thick. They got a lot of fat between their hide and the body, and all that fur. That meat will rot fast.
Yep.
It'll spoil fast. So the faster you can get the hide off of a dead animal, and the faster you can get the meat off the bone, because you can have what they call like bone rot, where the meat and the bone are touching, where it's together. You can store a lot of heat there. So if you cut it open, lay that bone, the meat cools a lot faster. So because flies were such an issue, we didn't really have time to set the meat out and let it cool because flies would land on it. So it went straight into bags and cooled, like hanging up in a bag. But as soon as the sun went down and the temp dropped, we took the meat out of the bags and you can lay it out on rocks or logs or whatever. And now the meat really isn't touching anything and it can really cool quite quickly.
Yeah.
And also develop a crust on the outside, which kind of can protect the meat. You lose some meat that way, but that little crust or rind that gets on the outside can kind of protect it. You can cut that rind off when you get home, and you have a nice piece of meat underneath.
With deer, I just feed it to my dog, but with the bear, it's kind of...
The rind?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want your dog to get trichinosis, so any omnivore or predator animal like a mountain lion, like something
even
like
pig.
that, those you just don't feed raw.
Yep.
Chicken, same thing.
Throw them in a crock pot, cook them for a while.
You can feed your dog after that.
Yeah.
So if you can cool meat to 40 degrees, it can easily last 2 weeks outside of a cooler, as a general rule. So if you pull your meat off of the bear, boom, set it aside, and the internal temperature of that meat can cool down to 40 degrees really quickly after you've pulled it out, then you've got about 2 weeks of it being unrefrigerated, where it won't go bad.
It's not bad, especially if you're out in the woods.
Like I said, if you can cool it at night down below that 40 degrees, generally you can keep it a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens is sometimes the temperature will creep back up.
I was going to say, what happens if you can't keep it at that temperature?
So the temp drops, you cool it as quickly as you can, right? Now you're dealing with it getting hot again and the temperature going back up. Well, if you only cool meat to 65 degrees, it can last just 3 days outside of a cooler.
Oof, that's not long.
So you're talking about, those temperature variables are big. In extreme temperatures, meat can be preserved by cooling it at night and bagging in a sleeping bag in a cool area during the day. So if you've got really cool nights, you can take your meat, get it nice and cold at night.
And how do you do that? Do you just hang it from a tree in a breeze?
Yeah, typically. And you find a ecothermal corridor. Places where it's just cold. Because you got wind blowing down from a creek that's nice and cold. The sun doesn't hit a certain spot in a little hole. And you can find those cool spots. Maybe it's dark timber where the heat just seems to not get in there. And it could be because of the cool stream and a breeze, or where the wind is blowing, where there's still snow up on the top of a mountain or whatever. So you can find these areas that are particularly cool. At night, if you can let that meat get really cold, you can take that meat and you can throw it inside of a sleeping bag or inside of something and hang it where it'll lock that cold temperature in. It's sort of like a cooler.
Yeah.
Right?
A little makeshift cooler.
If you're desperate, you can kind of, throw your sleeping bag around it during the day while you're off doing stuff. And then, it'll retain that cool temperature it got overnight. And it works remarkably well. The other thing that we've done when we were younger, we'd take our meat, put it inside garbage bags, and seal those as tight as we could. Black garbage bag, which I always bring contractor bags with me, 2 or 3. And they're just useful for lots of things. Yeah. But I'll throw my meat in there, and then you can throw that in a lake or a river or a creek.
Whatever.
Yep. And you can stick it underwater, and it's like a refrigerator. It's ice cold.
Yep.
Ice cold. There were many times where we actually didn't have a cooler, and it's like 105 degrees, and we killed an elk.
Yeah.
And there's flies everywhere. And even though we got it in bags, they're just landing all over it, and we weren't sure what to do. We're like, we're going to lose this meat. We just stuck it in the creek without a garbage bag around it. Just stuck it in there. I did the same thing on Prince of Wales Island when I shot a Sika blacktail with Travis, brother-in-law Travis. And we stuck it in the bottom of a creek. It got real hot. It worked great, actually. The meat doesn't get a crust, and it's lost a little flavor because it's a little washed out.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
not waterlogged.
Make it tasty.
It didn't make it not tasty though. It made it so it wasn't gamey at all. It was pretty bland. There's no blood left in it, like after it sits in the water like that. Actually, we've done it many times, and it's made for some really great gamey. I do not hesitate to put my meat right in the water.
Do some people say not to?
Oh yeah, lots of people say don't do it. Don't ever do it. It's wrong. It's like a crime against butchering and stuff. But I've done it. And don't care. It's turned out really good. Anthony shot at a bull elk in Mount Emily once, and we stuck it in the bottom of a creek, ice cold creek, and left it there for about a day and a half. Got it out, and it's real like soft. It's never going to get a crust on it or anything like that. Let it hang and drip dried and everything.
Is that a problem that it won't get a crust?
Not really.
As long as you're putting it in a bag.
Yeah, it's cold. Out. It was so cold it couldn't spoil now. And nothing climbed on it really because, it was cold. We made burger and steaks out of it, and it was good. So I wouldn't hesitate if I had to. I would prefer I put it in plastic and seal it best I can, and then put it underwater.
Yeah.
It's like a little refrigerator. Works great. You can do it in a snowbank if you hike to the top of a hill where there's still snow. Higher elevation, you can store your meat there, but you got to climb up a hill with heavy meat to put it there.
Which normally you're heading down.
You're heading downhill if you can. So it says right here, when temps are above 40 degrees, bacteria grow rapidly once an animal is dead. Higher the temp, the faster the bacteria grows. The faster the meat can remove from a dead animal's carcass, the longer the meat can last unrefrigerated, which we said, like if you get on an animal, let's say it's 100 degrees, you shoot it, boom, it dies. And you get the hide off of it and the meat off of it within an hour.
Yeah.
And you set it all out. you're way ahead of the game. Because while the animal is still intact, that's when most of the decay and the rotting and the bacteria and everything is setting in.
Yep. Got to break it down as fast as you can from the moment you shoot it.
Yeah. If it took you 5 hours to find it and it's been dead in the sun that whole time, you're really behind the curve. Where you could have had that meat last a week or two in the wilderness, you got 2 days.
Yeah.
Because it sat on the animal's body so long.
Yep.
Same conditions, it's just that it was trapped under a hide in that heat for too long.
Cooked a bit. Yep.
So something about bear fat, we've talked about it on the last show, a bunch of films. Bear fat doesn't keep well. It doesn't. It can taint the flavor of your meat. That's why I like to process a bear as quickly as possible. So I try to remove as much fat as I can because it can spoil. You know, if I can, I'm going to can it within a week or 2 of killing it. And generally, if you do that, the bear fat's tasty. I'll read it right here. Once bear fat is rendered or cooked, it does not have to be refrigerated. It can be frozen, and it keeps its consistency when thawed. Bear fat, once it's been cooked, is like coconut oil. It can live forever and last forever unrefrigerated right on your countertop. If it doesn't get cooked, it'll go rancid in your freezer even in a few months. You know, Anthony and I remember one of the bears that he shot, we were eating. I mean, it was his family's favorite game meat. It was so good. And then they had some jerky and things like that they made out of it, and they didn't eat it right away. And within a couple of months, it had a totally different flavor.
Said even the stuff that was in the freezer, uncooked, the fat still went bad.
For me, that's why canning is like king.
If you guys go watch our bear canning podcast on YouTube, you'll see we actually rendered down some bear fat.
I think it's episode 479.
But we also rendered down some bear fat in that podcast, and you can see how we did it.
Yeah. So bear fat, you render it out, remove the impurities. It's like bacon grease in a jar. You know, bear oil is superb for frying and is a great conditioner for steel, wood, and leather. And you can throw that on your boots.
I'm gonna try and make some beard balm out of it next time. I'm dead serious. Some bear balm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Name something more manly than that. What is that smell? Bear.
Yeah. Bear meat is safely eaten when cooked. We said that. Internal temperature of 165 degrees for 3 minutes. So bear wallows. Let's talk about that, because on our last video that we did in the spring, we came across a bear wallow. And that wallow was hammered by bears. I mean, it was crazy how much the bears had been hitting it. More than the elk
wallow,
or anything else.
You're like an elk wallow.
Yeah. No elk, though. It was all bears.
Well, yeah, because the bears claimed it.
And so it was water and mud holes, and those bears were just all up in it. Some people don't know this, but bears, like dogs, they don't have sweat glands. So they got their tongues out and they pant. Bears don't like hot weather because it just knocks them on their butt. Probably like a husky in Arizona at 110 degrees. Like they just don't belong there.
No.
That hot weather keeps bears down. They, like dogs, they don't have sweat glands, so they like to cool themselves externally. So jumping in water, rolling around, that's a very appealing thing for a bear to cool off. Bears frequently rub their backs on trees to mark their territory, which we saw, and Lusk shot his bear through the chest while it was getting a good back rub on a tree. Here's an interesting thing. Bears stomp walk.
See, now, when you say, I feel like stomp walk is a terrible name for what they're actually doing here.
They stomp walk.
OCD walk?
They stomp walk to mark their territory is the idea behind it, which is a thing where they place their feet in the exact same footprint on trails to mark their area. So, for example, where we were at down this canyon bottom where this wallow was, there are literally bear tracks, and you know they're bear tracks because there's no other animal that really does this, where they step in the exact same footprint. And so you're going through a forest and everything's green, but there is bare dirt circles everywhere a bear steps. These bears are 20 years old, right?
Walking the same spot.
Walking the same spot all the time, marking their territory, marking these places.
Now, when you say exact same, are they like...
I'm telling you, like, it's like a depression. And keep in mind, we're in the middle of nowhere, Lampers and I, Lusk. Like, not a lot of humans get to where we were at. So you're talking about a bear who probably hasn't been disturbed in a really long time, who's been using these pathways without human disturbance forever. And when another big bear knocks him off his pedestal, he's probably using the same trails. Like they've been using the same trails for thousands of years. This is what bears need to survive. This is the terrain, the food, the water sources, the bedding areas.
They're all on the same trail.
They're all the same. It's just different animals come in and take over the best stuff. They just got kicked out of the mansion. Someone else moves in. But the mansion doesn't just go empty.
Yeah.
You know? So when those bears step in that same spot, literally, they're like little post holes the size of bear paws. And there's no vegetation growing out of those little spots. And it's like literally you can just see the bear tracks through the woods where they just hit those same trails. So it's called, they have different names, but Stomp Walk is kind of a common term that's used, where they place their feet in the exact same footprint on trails to mark their area.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So you'll see that on Kodiak Island as well. I was there with Cole Kramer and our friends from Leopold, Tim Lesser and Michael Wonecke. We're walking up in Kodiak, and there's literally like little bear-sized steps across the tundra.
That's cool.
And they're like 6 inches deep. Like literally the bears have been stepping in those holes for, I'm like, they could walk anywhere, like over there. But no, when they're crossing those regions, they hit the same exact footprint each time. Now, I didn't know why they did it back then. I was kind of curious, researching into it. And well, the theory is it's a form of marking their territory. I would not be surprised, though, if the real reason is because they're damned lazy and they don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, I know this.
There's a trail here.
Yeah. Crazy. It is really weird to come across that sign in the woods. And it's.
Like, if you didn't know that, man, that would blow your mind.
Yeah. I mean, I've chased bears. I've seen that before. Lampers was talking about it when we were up there. He's like, bears are so weird the way they just step in the same exact spot for 100 years. It's like, yeah, it's strange. In one study, black bears were responsible for killing 10% of the newborn fawn population in a selected region. This is for another podcast, really. We covered it once, actually. I can't recall the exact episode it was, but we had read some pretty in-depth detail on bears and their effects on fawn populations. Because there's a lot of questions around, do mountain lions kill a lot of fawns? Do coyotes? Do wolves? Do bears? And in some areas, bears are known to like kill 50% of the fawns, like on POW Island.
Yeah.
They literally kill 1 out of 2 fawns in the spring that are born.
They basically are just sitting around waiting, listening for it.
Yeah, and some black bears become extremely skilled, just like mountain lions, at killing a specific animal. Like mountain lions, there are some that are just really good at killing porcupine. That's their favorite animal to hunt.
Over, get them.
Right? Others can't do it without getting spined all over the place. They're better at killing, you name it. Like they kind of can specialize sometimes because they're so unique, just like people are. But it seems like on Prince of Wales, they kill 1 out of 2. There's a lot of blacktail, though. A lot of bears, too. There was a study that I researched where black bears were responsible for killing 10% of the newborn fawn population in a given region. And that was kind of a low, one finding found that out to be the case. Sometimes far less is the theory. Sometimes more depending on the area. But that's quite a bit, though. 10%, 1 out of 10 taken by a bear. Interesting. Okay, bears have prehensile or detached lips. So this enables them to pluck berries from shrubs. So their lips are like fingers, the way they can move. And like we don't have prehensile lips.
No.
It'd be cool. But like they literally can move their lips like fingers. It's like an extension of a hand, and they can grab these berries and pluck them and stuff. Our last fact, Brent, black bears have 42 teeth adapted to an omnivorous diet of vegetation, nuts, berries, insect, and some meat. So their teeth, it's interesting. They're built to crush things, built to cut things like grass, built to, they're kind of
They're a walking garbage disposal.
They kind of have teeth like a cow. But then they also have teeth like a dog, like for eating meat and stuff. So pretty neat. I just think bears are the coolest. I hope this podcast gets you kind of interested in bears a little more. And a lot of people were afraid of what to do with their meat in the backcountry. And like I said, the sooner you get it off the animal, the better. get it cool, get it hanging, use good game bags. At night, make sure you're getting it in the coolest way possible so it can retain as much cool going into the heat of the day. Stash it if you have to in a garbage bag in a creek or wrap it up in a sleeping bag. I remember when I was a kid, we'd kill deer, we'd hang up the deer, it'd be hanging and be super cold at night, and then the day it'd be like 75 degrees. Mm-hmm. Grandpa just wrapped a sleeping bag around the whole carcass, around the top, and it hung down, and it was in the shade of a tree. And the sleeping bag in the shade, you'd reach your hand in there, and that whole carcass was super cold. So different ways to keep it cool. But people who do not kill their own meat, don't harvest their own game, they don't realize how long meat can last unrefrigerated if you care for it properly. I think our meat was out of a refrigerator, like Ryan's first bear, probably 6-7 days, unrefrigerated in 60, 70 degree days. And the meat all was fine. Yeah. So
it hung just for 5 straight days before you guys ever tried to get out of there or anything.
Yep. So this year, something I'm doing a little different than I did last year was we brought the Graxaw bags, but we didn't have a bag big enough to fit a hide in.
Oh, okay.
And we got some real nice hides, and I didn't want to just let it rot. I wanted to keep it. So this time I'm bringing some black ovis, like a big black ovis giant game bag that I can throw a whole hide in. Because once we cooled the hide down, which was pretty easy to do at night, we didn't have any way to keep the flies off of it.
Yeah.
There was no way to wrap it up somehow and then keep flies away. And so we had fly eggs land all over the hides, and it was really extreme. The flies were a major, major nuisance. So my plan this year is to have a nice, big cottony type game bag, lots of airflow. So when I get the hide, I'm going to lay it out, let it cool, so it's nice and cool at night. Make sure no flies have landed on it, because as soon as I take it off the body, I'll probably put it right in the bag. Then that night, when the flies are gone and it's super cold, I'll take it out, I'll hang it up, and I'll let it cool all night long. Next morning, I'll stick it back in the bag and stash it where it can stay cool under a sleeping bag or something. And then I'll pull it out each night, let it get another cool on it, throw it in the bag, because the hide itself was not in danger of having the hair slip or go bad or go rot at all. It actually was keeping just fine in spite of the hot temperatures. Mm-hmm. Our issue was the flies were landing, the maggots they're laying their eggs, and they were going to hatch and start tearing up the hide.
So Graxaw has new XL sized game bag. So then the dimensions for the new ones, for the XLs, are 14 by 33. They're a little heavier because they're bigger.
The question about the Graxaw, though, is these bear claws are an issue, and that is a boneless meat bag, and these things will poke a hole in that kind of bag.
The claws. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's why I was saying a black Ovis game bag was kind of my alternative for the hide. The Graxaw bags are incredible, but they're not puncture resistant.
Nope.
So when you throw meat in there, they're great. They're awesome, and they're nice and thin. They're lightweight. They're tough as hell, but they don't withstand puncture well, which is fine because we didn't have any problems with that. But with a hide or boned animal, you want a bag that's heavier duty, thicker. It's just more weight, more hassle, takes up more space. I like the Graxaw for the meat. That's why I said probably a different bag for the hide. And I don't know if that's big enough. I mean, these hides take up so much friggin' space. They're just massive. It needs something about the size of a giant pillowcase to fit the hide in during the day. But all that is just to keep the flies off of it. Mm-hmm. All in all, though, depends on the temps. You know, we're going quite a bit earlier this year. I mean, it should be quite a bit colder than it was last year. We were getting mid to late May last time. Now we'll be hitting it earlier. So we'll see. Hopefully the bear hunting is still good.
Hopefully. I want some more meat.
All right. That's it for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed that show. Let us know. Leave us a comment on the video if you watch the YouTube video. DM us on Instagram. If you got any questions, you want us to cover a subject, let us know. We'd love to cover that. Help us out. Go to mountainops.com. Use the code GRITTY, and you can save some money there. Also, we're doing that giveaway with Mountain Ops on the Gritty Razor. Polaris Razor Turbo S. We put that in quarantine, though, because right now there's just so much going on with this COVID thing. We decided to set that aside. If you have already purchased stuff using the code GRITTY and you got all those free entries and so forth, we've kept track of all of that. Everyone who enters is in. So that's cool. But we're going to go ahead and put that aside right now because of this whole thing. And then we'll bring it back out as soon as things settle down, just because there's no time to like really promote it or talk about it. And so we're just going to put that aside for now. So, but if you're entered and you've already done that, you're still entered. And then when we reopen it, we'll resume the giveaway, hopefully when this stuff settles down. But you can still use the code GRITTY to save, get free shipping at Mountain Ops. Use the code GRITTY at Seek Outside for some shelters and titanium stoves. Use the code GRITTY at Sissy Sticks for some sweet trekking poles. Graxaw, we mentioned them. They're good partners. They're helping us out. And Heather's Choice. I just got a giant box of Heather's Choice in the mail. Save 15% there. I think the salmon chowder is money. And all the packaroons, of course. Breakfast, I love. I like buckwheat, so it's great breakfast for me. So check them out. And getting my bow set up right now. Just got a new dozen Black Eagle X Impact arrows tipped with Valkyrie broadheads. And you can save money at Valkyrie Archery using the code GRITTY there. Get 5% off. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.